Welcome back. Let's talk about ideas. You may have had them, I certainly have. Now, I think ideas are useful in particular to anyone who hasn't yet created anything, because it could lead them to do so. And that would also see them adding to the project of humanity, which I think is important. Now, when you're designing a product, I think it's helpful to think of ideas in terms of needs, and those needs could be your needs. It's also important to consider the scope of the project that you are about to embark on. Now, this means dealing with limitations and constraints, and unless you do so, you might get lost. So, let me give you an example of this. Maybe you need an octave fuzz. You tried all the ones that they have at the local shop. Some of them aren't quite loud enough. Some give off weird ring modulation artifacts that get in the way. Some have no mids, so you get lost in the mix. Let's look at what an octave fuzz actually does. At the entry point of the circuit, you'll find a circuit block dealing with amplifying the signal. This feeds a stronger signal to the circuit block that actually takes care of the octave generation. Now, this is where we need to stop for a second and learn a little bit about everything. Okay, so when you're playing your instrument, one of your most important tasks is to play the correct notes. And as you're doing so, what you're actually doing is mainly focusing on hitting the fundamental frequencies. So say middle A is 440 Hertz, as you may know. Now the problem is, in nature, notes don't come packaged as their fundamental frequency alone. Instead, they come packaged with what you in English call harmonic content, or maybe the harmonic frequencies, or the harmonic series. In Norwegian, transliterated, we call them overtones, or the overtone series. And I think that's a more helpful way of thinking about it. You see, this harmonic content consists of frequencies that are intervals derived from the fundamental frequency in a specific pattern. And in fact, much of what makes an instrument sound the way it does has to do with how it produces this overtone series. So you could look at the overtone series and by it alone judge what instrument you're listening to. And in fact, that's kind of how we deal with it in nature. That's what your brain does, even though you just think that you're hearing a cello. But a cello could play the same voice as a trumpet, and you could easily tell them apart. Now, this stuff is important for octave fuzzes too, because the octave generator, the thing that's actually responsible for doubling the frequency, it does not know that you want it to be doubling the exact fundamental frequency that you're playing. Instead, it takes everything you give it, all the harmonic content, everything, all these little more faint notes, and doubles everything. So, if you want it to be as punchy and clear and articulated as it can be, then what you need to do is you have to deal with the harmonic content before it enters the octave generator. And so the simplest way of doing this, and the way that I did so with Odin, and I didn't do with Fenris, is you just dump it to ground. So what you're handing over to the octave generator is approximating as clear as possible just the fundamental frequency. So that might mean adding some compression to it, and just cutting high frequency content. And on the other side of the generator, you'll be pleased to hear a very articulated, clear and strong octave up. Now, if what you want is all the chaos, all the unpredictability, all the messy intermodulation and ring modulation, then maybe you should just leave all the high frequency content in, so that you have as much information as possible for the octave generator to have different frequencies clash and intermingle. So that's what I mean. You need to be able to tell what you actually want. And usually this will happen organically, because if you want a certain thing, you know that you want that thing. But that doesn't mean that you know how to get it. Alright, so it's time for the reveal. Now, the product that I've been working on is, in essence, one ideal version of the Fuzz phase. Now, the Fuzz phase is glorious. I love it. But there are things about it, quirks that it has, that can make it quite difficult to use in a modern live rig. And so my job is to figure out which parts of the circuit, or circuits that sort of do the same thing, are important, which can be omitted completely, and which just absolutely get in the way and need to be dealt with. So this is a difficult task, and it's not the first time I've tried. It's not the first time anyone has tried. In fact, it's one of the most common things to do in pedal building. So my job needs to start by figuring out how to test for these attributes, so that I can figure out which ones are actually important. And so I'm trying to narrow down my search. And in doing so, as I'm working on developing the circuit itself, I may stray off into way different circuits, looking for the essential components of what makes the Fuzz phase great. As I'm doing that, I'm looking for those great things while avoiding the things that get in the way. So yeah, so I need to define those. But furthermore, what also happens usually during development is you will uncover a whole bunch of sort of paradoxes and problems that need to be dealt with. You may have to make compromises here and there in order to make the thing stable and work the way that you expect it to. So for the next video, I thought I'd take you through a whole bunch of sound samples to better illustrate the different effects and side effects of the circuit topology that needed to be dealt with. And I'll show you the compromises that were made. I'll show you why I made them, and yeah, so yeah, stay tuned for that, and do the subscribe dance and be kind to your pets, and I'll see you in a bit.